The 1930s were an era that painted the American dream not with vivid hues of prosperity, but with stark shades of survival, resilience, and simple joys in the most testing of time. So fasten your time travel seatbelts as we journey back to the unforgettable saga that was the Great Depression. Facts vs. History presents What Was Life Like During the Great Depression? Breadlines. During the Great Depression, the sight of seemingly endless queues winding around street corners became an all-too-familiar scene. Breadlines became a lifeline for countless people and families facing extreme poverty. These lines, stretching for blocks, represented not only the desperation for sustenance, but also the tenacity and resourcefulness of those seeking to survive. Amidst the overwhelming scarcity of food, people gathered in these lines, patiently waiting for a meager loaf of bread or a warm bowl of soup. The atmosphere was one of camaraderie, as strangers bonded over their shared plight and exchanged stories of their struggles. While breadlines were a sobering reminder of the devastating poverty gripping the nation, they also showcased the power of compassion and the will to survive. Hobos and wandering souls. With jobs in short supply and homes lost, many men embarked on transient lifestyles, becoming hobos. Clutching on to the dreams of better tomorrows, they rode the rails, enduring dangerous conditions and harsh weather, hoping to find work in a different city or state. Hobos, with their worn-out clothing and bindles slung over their shoulders, became a common sight along the railroad tracks. But life on the road was far from glamorous. As hobos faced constant dangers and hardships, they hopped onto freight trains, evading railroad bulls and the threat of injury or death. The journey was treacherous, with hobos huddled together in train cars, enduring freezing temperatures, scorching heat, and torrential rains. They relied on their wits and resourcefulness to navigate this transient existence, always moving forward in search of a better life. Making do. In an era of severe lack of, everything, resourcefulness became an invaluable skill. Individuals and families across the nation had to learn how to make do with the little they had, repurposing items, mending clothes, and stretching pennies to their breaking point. From homemade toys to clothing fashioned out of feed sacks, this era birthed a culture of sheer ingenuity. The kitchen became a battleground against hunger, with families devising clever ways to stretch their meager food supplies. Recipes were altered and improvised, and meals were carefully planned to ensure that no scrap of food went to waste. Leftovers were transformed into new dishes, and gardens were cultivated to supplement meals with fresh produce. The Dust Bowl. The Great Depression was further compounded by the devastating ecological disaster known as the Dust Bowl. The once fertile farmlands of the Great Plains turned into desolate wastelands as a result of severe drought and poor land management practices. Dust storms, known as black blizzards, enveloped entire communities, obliterating visibility and suffocating the air with thick clouds of soil. These storms, sometimes lasting days, divvied out pure devastation on the livelihoods of farmers and their families. Survival meant finding new and novel ways to combat the relentless assault of dust. Families would seal every crack and crevice in their homes, using wet blankets and towels to block out the invading particles. But no matter how much they tried to protect themselves, the dust somehow always managed to find a way in, coating every surface and infiltrating every breath. Farmers who had once relied on the land for sustenance found themselves trapped in a cycle of despair. Their crops withered, their livestock perished, and the fertile soil turned into a barren wasteland. Unable to make ends meet, many were forced to abandon their farms, seeking refuge elsewhere in the hope of finding work and a better future. Silver screen dreams. While reality dealt a harsh hand, the entertainment industry thrived as a beacon of solace. The enchantment of the silver screen transported audiences from the hardships of daily life into a world of fantasy, romance, and adventures. People eagerly lined up at movie theaters across the nation, clutching their precious few coins to immerse themselves in the magic of motion pictures. Within the confines of a darkened theater, audiences found respite, albeit only temporarily, from their struggles. They were captivated by the glamorous stars of the era like Clark Gable, Bette Davis, and Katharine Hepburn. who epitomized elegance, charm, and stability. Radio, with its ability to transmit voices and music across vast distances, became a lifeline for millions. Families gathered around their radios, eagerly tuning in to their favorite shows, comedies, and news broadcasts. Through radio, people also discovered new music genres like jazz and swing that uplifted their spirits and offered a temporary taste of deliverance from the daily grind. Popular shows like The Lone Ranger and The War of the Worlds captured imaginations and sparked conversations. Desperation and Crime. The Great Depression created a breeding ground for outlaws and gangsters who took advantage of the economic turmoil and disillusionment sweeping the nation. In the eyes of some, these criminals became folk heroes, representing a form of rebellion against a society that had seemingly turned its back on its citizens. One of the most infamous figures of this era was John Dillinger, a charismatic bank robber who captured the public's attention with his daring heists and audacious escapes from law enforcement. Dillinger's brazen exploits, coupled with his Robin Hood-like persona, made him a symbol of defiance against a system that had failed many. Bonnie Parker and Clyde Barrow, another notorious duo, embarked on a crime spree that likewise captured the imagination of the nation. Their robbing of banks and evasive tactics in the face of law enforcement earned them notoriety and an almost mythological status. Hoovervilles. As the economic crisis deepened, more and more families across the nation faced the heart-wrenching prospect of losing their homes. Unable to keep up with mortgage payments or rent, they were evicted, often left with no place to go. The once familiar comfort and stability of a home was abruptly replaced by the harsh reality of destitution. In the absence of shelter, makeshift communities began to emerge on the outskirts of cities and towns. These settlements, known as Hoovervilles, were composed of shanty-like dwellings constructed from scavenged materials like tar paper, scrap wood, and cardboard. Lacking basic amenities, Hoovervilles symbolized the desperate circumstances in which people found themselves. Despite the dire living conditions, the residents of Hoovervilles demonstrated remarkable resilience. They organized themselves, forming communities where everyone contributed what they could to ensure survival. Resourcefulness and mutual support became the currency of these shanty towns as neighbors shared meager supplies, constructed communal kitchens, and looked out for one another. The New Deal. In the depths of the Great Depression, Franklin D. Roosevelt assumed the presidency with a bold and brave vision of revitalizing the nation. The New Deal, a comprehensive series of programs and policies, became the cornerstone of his administration's response to the economic crisis. It sought to provide relief to the unemployed, stimulate economic growth, and establish a foundation for a more equitable society. One of the most prominent initiatives of the New Deal was the Works Progress Administration, or WPA. This ambitious program employed millions of Americans in various public works projects, including the construction of roads, bridges, schools, and parks. Not only did the WPA provide jobs and income for families, but it also left a lasting impact on the nation's infrastructure, with many of these projects still visible today. Another significant achievement of the New Deal was the establishment of the Social Security Act. This landmark legislation introduced a safety net for the most vulnerable members of society, providing unemployment insurance, retirement benefits, and aid for dependent children. Social Security transformed the way that Americans approached retirement, offering a sense of security and dignity to millions of people and their families. Furthermore, the New Deal emphasized the importance of arts and culture as a means of healing and rejuvenation. Programs like the Federal Art Project employed artists to create murals, sculptures, and other works of public art that celebrated the nation's history and culture. Though the New Deal faced criticism and its impact varied across different communities, it represented a paradigm shift in government intervention and the social contract between the state and its citizens. It laid the groundwork for future social and economic policies and fostered a sense of hope and optimism during one of the nation's most challenging periods. Now it's time to hear from you. How do experiences of this era resonate with our present-day challenges? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section below.